technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Now the Ajax client library is interesting because it really does bring all the object-oriented concepts to the JavaScript world. Microsoft has written a client-side library that gives us the ability to define classes, namespaces. Maybe you need to register a class with a namespace. You can do that. Everything's contained in this root level sys namespace. They use sys because it distinguishes it from the system namespace which we have in the normal .NET framework. Keep in mind JavaScript is something that we're using on the client side here for Ajax programming. Maybe you want to register interfaces or enums, or you want to say this class implements this interface, right? And of course you can do all of that with the type class, which is another JavaScript class that Microsoft defined in this Ajax client library. A lot of common functions are used to working with in .NET, like working with arrays, working with strings, string builder, page load event handler. They're already created for you with this Ajax client library that Microsoft created. And again, like I said before, initially it was small. There wasn't much included when the Ajax framework was released with 1.0. They've continued to add many other classes that we can use. Something to get used to? This $sign character. Get used to using the $sign character for these shortcuts. Like for example, when you're writing your JavaScript, instead of typing the full get element by ID, you can just say $get. And they already have this shortcut, if you will, defined in Ajax client library, making your life easier. Add handler, remove handler, right? Or remove handlers. The find will help you find certain controls that might be on the page if you need to manipulate them. There's a lot of other shortcuts you can use, and there's a lot of other great functions. Simple things like the toString method. You need to convert something to a string, you can call toString off of it, and that's something else that's available off this client library. Now, something to keep in mind, guys, there's a lot of demand for your skills as a web developer. You have to know HTML, you have to know CSS, you have to know JavaScript, you have to know .NET, C# or VB. You have to know the ASP.NET programming model. I mean, we have a separate week-long class in Intertech which just covers ASP.NET, and that's with the full understanding that you do understand .NET itself. We have a complete C# and VB courses as well, which take a week. You may also need to know MVC, which is the future of ASP.NET in my mind. From what I'm seeing, everybody's going the MVC route. Developers must also understand Ajax programming. You must know how to use that XML HTTP request object, and how, of course, the Ajax framework from Microsoft makes it easier for us to do this Ajax programming. Developers must fully understand events, defining events, subscribing or unsubscribing from the events. You must know how to do this on the client side as well as on the server side. So there's a lot of skills that you must know to create these custom controls in Ajax. Now first off, if you're going to create a custom Ajax server control, you also have to know how to create a custom server control itself, whether or not you're doing Ajax programming. And this means you're going to define yourself a class which inherits either from the control class or the web control class, depending on whether or not it's going to have a user interface. Control, of course, is the base class for web control, and if you inherit directly from control, chances are good you're not doing much with the user interface. You're not working with styles and things of that nature. Whereas web control, well, then you are using some styles. You may want to use some inherited styles or make manipulations to them yourself. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different attributes that are used when you define your own custom control. And I'm actually going to show you an example of a custom control. This is something that we cover in the ASP.NET course. At the class level, you're going to define several different attributes, specifically how your control is going to behave and how it's going to appear in the designer. Also, at the property level, you're in control of what properties are going to appear in the property window in Visual Studio. A couple of popular methods we like to override: render contents and create child controls. These two methods here can actually be overridden, and then of course you can put your own custom content in, your own custom control for exactly what HTML you want to be emitted out to the client. Also note that you can include your own custom JavaScript. that runs in the web browser. And the reason I say aha in there is that basically is the way that we can go ahead and create our own custom Ajax code. Okay. Now, taking a look at an example, notice I'm going to talk about the test repeater web control. Well, I'll come into Visual Studio here, and you'll notice I've got this my repeater, and here's one called myrepeater.cs, and inside of here I have a namespace called text repeater web control. I've also got this class declaration for myRepeater, but you'll notice that it's inheriting from a class called web control. This is the default declaration you get when you create a custom web server control in Visual Studio. I've also got these attributes here. Default property, this will be the default property that's selected in the property window when this control is dragged and dropped onto a form. Toolbox data, this is information that's going to show up at the very top of the web page using that register directive. Note how it says run it equals server. And then I've got this curly brace, zero curly brace in here twice. That's going to be for the tag prefix. I've also got a toolbox bitmap specified here. You see, once I create my own custom control and compile this into a DLL, once I add it to the toolbox, this is the image that's going to appear. Text repeater web control.myrepeater.bmp. Which, if I go take a look at that image, there's a cool little frog logo here. Notice it's 32 by 32. It has to be either 16 by 16 or 32 by 32. There's a lot of strict requirements for getting this image to actually appear on the control. Note the name of the image as well. It has to be the namespace.class.bmp. There's a lot of crazy requirements. And these, of course, are all specified with these attributes above the class declaration. Now, in my custom control, you'll notice that I have a couple of private fields here. One's an integer, one's a color type. Notice it's called iText repeat count and C color text. And of course, I have my own custom properties as well. Now, mind you, these properties here, like text repeat count, text color, text, these guys are all going to show up in the properties window when somebody drags and drops this control from the toolbox onto the designer form. And I'm in control of what's going to appear. For example, if there's going to be a description at the bottom of the properties window, and if they sort by category with their properties, this is the category called Intertech. I've got this third property for text. They already give you this automatically when you create a custom control in Visual Studio. And this one's just using viewState to store the state information. I also did an override on that render contents method, and notice they're giving us this great HTML text writer. Based on that, I'm using the output to actually go ahead and write out this information. Okay.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.